Hi, I'm Priscilla Baldwin with Light Care Companions in Northwest Florida, and we have with us tonight Dr. Nikia Evans, and she's going to give us her introduction. So,
I'm
Dr. Evans.
Yes, Dr. T. Nikia Evans. I am the owner of Play Coach in Pensacola, which is precocious leaders and early years coaching firm. I also am a center director for Head Start and the founder of a nonprofit called Babes of the Kingdom.
Oh, wow.
I'm from Pensacola, Florida, and I just love working with young children and families and helping encourage and inspire others.
Okay. So what is the age group of the children that you do work with?
I work with children from birth to 5 years old. So infants to 5 years, pre-kindergarten years.
Pre-kindergarten years. Okay. So our subject this evening is executive functioning skills. Can you tell us a little bit about the executive function? Because I know that when the children when you take them to the pediatric doctor and they are behind or delayed in their motor skills, or if they're behind on their milestones, how does that particularly work?
Well, executive functioning, like just defined as simply a set of mental processes that provide the capacity to plan, organize, manage emotions, and to maintain attention. So these skills are needed in life. They're really just life skills, basic life skills. So if a child is not showing the ability to maintain attention with someone, being able to solve simple problems, to explore and investigate and discover things on their own, that becomes a concern. A lot of times parents say kids are being kids, but in a childhood setting or in an early intervention program, usually there's lots of assessments done on milestones on developmentally appropriate practices. So we usually inform the parents, or they inform doctors themselves if they have some type of concern, and some type of guidance is provided, or an assessment tool. What is commonly used now, even in doctor's office, is the ASQ, which is also used in our Head Start programs, as well, to assess infant and toddlers, and then Brigance for the 3 to 5 years, but there's also ELAP, EDAP, and other assessment tools out there for providers to use to see the progress of children.
So if I take my granddaughter to her pediatrician and she's delayed, I know the doctors have a tendency to say that this individual is delayed, whether it's at 2 months and they're supposed to be able to pick their head up off of the mattress, or if they're prone and they're supposed to be able to lift up. What if you have a child that's 4 months old and still cannot lift their heads? Is that delayed, or are they behind with the milestone, or how would that be corrected?
So early intervention, so usually giving the parents resources and tools, or an early learning provider, which will come in. Like with Play Coach, I'm a coach at home that I love coaching parents and early childhood professionals. So I would provide resources about like head lifting, turning over, adjusting the child to see different things, giving them tools to increase the fine motor skills and to strengthen their back and things of that sort. We also have in this city Early Steps that does that as well. So there's a lot of early learning. I know Studer is working on early learning in the city as well, with like putting information within the different parks and resources. So that's available. But a lot of times it has improved. I will say it has improved with the doctors following assessment tools to refer to intervention providers or teachers, or home visitors of that sort. But years ago, doctors would kind of be delayed with that information because they looked solely at the health of the child more so than the developments. But it has been progression seen. I've been in this 17 years, so there has been some progression, especially in the last 5 years, with seeing doctors now using these tools to work alongside of early childhood teachers and professionals that are noticing these things that parents might not notice right away.
Okay, so are you finding that younger parents are not knowing or not?
Not just younger, I would even say sometimes a lot of young parents refer to the elders, and a lot of elders will say, well, in my day, such and such, or
Okay.
the child didn't talk until they were 4 and they're fine. And so if they hear stories like that within their family, they tend to shy away because a lot of people do not want to embrace something is developmentally off with their child, or against social norms. But with early childhood intervention, if it's caught within, especially in those first 3 years, by the time they go to school, it's not even noticed by anybody else. So, because the brain develops so rapidly within those first few years. So you really want to spend time giving them all the experiences to make the brain connections and the synaptic nerves and things all getting the fire shootings that's needed, the experiences, the opportunities, the language, the skills, given in those early years so that they can have a successful life.
Okay, so one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is with the children that are small, is it possible now to catch the diagnosis for autism now
Yes.
than what it was later, like maybe 10 years,
Yes. Because
later?
I would say about 17 years ago, it was actually not diagnosed until between 3 and 5, and now they're diagnosing around 18 months. So it is a big difference and change, and probably not probably, it's been a lot of research within the early learning sector that has produced these changes and having people more being advocates for change and for growth and development in their early years. So
are you seeing the autism phrase used more often now, or is that diagnosis more frequent than it has been in the past 17 years?
I would say that it is more frequent in ADHD and ADD, and simply because of awareness. So the terms weren't there. I think these things were still a part of society years ago, but the terms weren't as talked about as they are now. But part of it, some of these things, they are mislabeled, I can say too, like with executive functioning, it could just simply, they need more opportunities and brain connections and in the environment and space to grow into. So a child is not necessarily developmentally late, but they've been refrained from the environment to propel. So they will show factors of being delayed until someone spends time with them to give them the opportunity to reach and master those skills that they wouldn't think about. Like I think it's around 18 months. One of the things is for a child to be able to take an object and stick under like a sofa or something to bring an item out to them. Most parents wouldn't think about seeing if their child could do those type of things at that old. So within the first year, a lot of parents, well, the first 2 years, a lot of parents do everything for the child, and they want to be like helicopter parents, my baby, I'll get
Right.
So it's hard. That's why the diagnosis too wasn't so readily available years ago as now, where a lot of early learning facilities are actually doing testing and assessments more so than babysitting. So that's a different as well, looking at assessment outcomes than in previous years.
So earlier you had spoken about the different testing that you do when the child comes to pre-K. Can you explain that, the different types and exactly what is done with those, with that testing?
Okay, so it's not like a formal test. So you observe a child in their environment to see if they do something like I mentioned with the going under the sofa, or how they hold a book, or if they're able to, okay, let's see. So you see this little piece here.
Mhm.
So this is a simple problem solving thing. Um, you can do so much with it. Identifying colors. So if they're older, you might ask them the different colors, or what's larger, what's smaller, as far as the size of the circle. So if you ask the child to put the largest at the bottom and put all the circles on this stick and bring the smallest to the top. So depending on the age of the child, they will begin, or they'll start putting the wrong thing that way. Someone will notice it. And this is not how it's supposed to look. But if they do it this way, then you will actually write down exactly what they did, and there'll be a score on if they were able to complete the task or not. If they're persistent, like without you engaging, and they continue to formulate the entire piece together, then you can say, the child was persistent, they engages, they attend. You see all those things within that activity. So it's not something that, like I said, it's not like a formal thing, but it's observing them and playing with them and seeing what they are able to do, and then assessing based on norms. So that's pretty much with any early childhood assessment.
Okay. Are you seeing, is it more artistic boys than it is girls?
Now, I can't say statistically from my experience, so I don't want to inaccurately speak, but from my experience, a lot of times it is more boys than girls from the experience that I've had, but I can't say that statistically. I don't really study autism like that. I try to, me personally, as a coach or early childhood coach and a director for Head Start, I look to intervene where I can to help provide the opportunities for children to advance where they are. So no matter what diagnosis they're given, there are things that we can do to help further their learning and have a stronger foundation with relationships with others, like, executive function skills. There's 12 on some research, there's 10 on others, there's 8 on others, but
Right.
all of them embody the same goals of planning and time management and social thinking and communicating and task initiation. All those things are embedded, no matter how many specific terms are used. So as an early childhood person, I look to communicate with parents and other professionals, like spend time communicating at least 20 minutes with a child. Bring more vocabulary into their experience. Give them opportunities to do things themselves instead of intervening right away to see what they can do. Give them complex situations, because problem solving is something that's needed as an adult. Let's say with flexibility, if we normally cook on a stove, but then the a hurricane comes and there's no electricity, how can we cook? So our minds have to be able to adapt to the change and still be able to fulfill the need. So in that case, we would either grill or use candles. I've done this before, use candles and providing a space to make sure that the food gets warm and not let the fire go out, and still be able to eat without having a stove. So with young children, we want them to think outside the box too. A lot of times as adults, we want to train children a specific way, do it this way, but we should also let them explore different ways of doing things. Like, I used to work in Hong Kong, and a lot of the JJs, well, they're called nannies, but they call them JJs. They're nannies from the Philippines. A lot of them wanted the children to use their right hand only to write. So some kids use their left hand, and they were like dishonor it because they believed that the left hand was for wiping after using the restroom, and the right hand was to solely write and to eat. So
Oh.
I had to share with them, yeah, that's not necessarily thing. So what I did was I put them in a setting where they had to use the opposite hand and keep being told exactly what to do. And then I got their feedback. How did that feel? And they're like, I didn't like you telling me to do something that I was uncomfortable with when I know my strength was somewhere else. And it's the same with children. I was making that connection. Like, you don't like that, but children don't either. But we as adults want them to follow things a certain way, when really we want them to be the best and explore their maximize their potential. And the way to do that is giving them the opportunity to explore and come to conclusions and do things on their own within a structural setting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. How often do you find that let me pose this question. Do you go out in the community to do these services, or do you do that at your place of business?
Okay, so through Head Start is through the classrooms and mentoring teachers. And when we have family engagement networks where parents come, I'll speak there if they have questions and intervene in that way. Through Play Coach, I actually will go to the homes and do assessments if parents are wanting that desire. So there'll be a developmental assessment, and if they want to continue, because some parents, they can figure things out with the resources, but others, they want to be held accountable. And so they're like, come back, come back. So I'll come back and provide different tools to help them to meet milestones and other resources for parenting within their context. As I shared earlier, I'm not one to stick to a formula, but more so stick to the intervention for the child. Every child has a different need. Every family dynamic has a different need. But there's some things that are considered normalcy on those developmental milestones. So what we would do is we would provide in context of their social norm within their home, and bring in different materials in for the child to explore or to engage in what the parents can look for.
Okay.
So
what would you tell a very new parent that has a child and don't know up from down? They just have this little baby. They don't know what to do with it. What would your experience that you have that would guide them? Because when you're first time parent, it's like you consume all of this information, but you don't know exactly where to place it and where it goes. So what would you say?
So depending on the needs of the family, again, okay, through Head Start I'm going to start there before I go into some of my services. But through Head Start, they provide what we call as peer card books. So these peer card books was made by Acelera Learning and the Shine Early Learning. They came together and they made this book. So it's a book of different routines and activities that parents can do to pause with their child and be in the moment with them, to engage with them, to reflect, and to encourage their child, and then to extend whatever activity. So those are set things that as a resource for them. Now, me personally, I will always tell parents that they are to set a daily routine for themselves and their child. Spend time, at least 20 minutes a day, reading with the child, and also intentional activity. So playing with the child is important. Just giving a toy, and we're in an information age with technology, and I think this is what I personally believe. It is a detriment to our society by giving young children tablets and cell phones and allowing it to teach them everything.
Mhm.
My method is every child should have the sheet, which is to see, hear, and experience all learning. So everything that you want your child to learn, they need to see, hear, and experience. So spending time providing, whether if it's language, you want to teach another language, you have to have the experience and bring it around them in different forms, with writing, hearing, touching, all those things. Modeling, parents need to model the behavior that they want exemplified. It's no longer do as I say, not as I do.
As I do.
Because children want to model their parents. They model what's in their environment. So it's very important that parents role model and be the models and the examples that they want their children to follow. To play games, problem solving games, and recall. Well, I'm speaking all these things, but I have lots of little things, but little books, but engaging when you open the book, not just reading, but explaining like the cover, the pictures, what's in the book, having a child to just share experiences when they're young, not necessarily words, but what do you see here? What do you feel should happen next? Or what do you think about that? Matching games. So it's simple. I mean, this is just Blue's Clues, but putting out different things for the kids to match to help make those connections too. Children in the infant age starts to discover that items are still there when, like, if you cover something up, they'll begin to notice, hey, the item is still there, and they'll start searching for items. So they make those connections by having the experience. Without the experience, they can't make the connection. Mighty Mind. Nah, I like Mighty Mind. It starts on like age 3, but it can go up to, it says age 8, but I even think it goes to age 12. So I have some that are younger, like board, where it has all the colors where the kids can match to make like a bunny or something like that. But with Mighty Mind, it's a little different because it's the shadow. So it starts off with 2 and then it increases and it can go up to so many different items. Within, I think this one has like 30 different ways that you can build different things, but it doesn't have the color code for you. So it's the shadow. So you have to actually figure out the pieces to make a man or to make the butterfly. And that takes a lot of brain work. But doing things like that will help increase executive functioning. Role play with the children, like dress up, being in the kitchen, dramatic play. It's not necessarily buying all of the high-end toys, but just giving them experiences. So you can take pots and pans from your kitchen and pretend to make something, or they can actually come in the kitchen with you and explore. With babies, speaking to them about your actions as well as their actions. Like, I see you put your hand in your mouth, we as adults or as people, we tend to use motherese or parentese, which is the high-pitched voice, automatically, like without somebody training you, like, oh, the baby, you just make these voices. But in the midst of doing that, being intentional about the things that you say, I see you're smiling. I see you're upset, using feelings and talking about emotions, and that you have them too. What's making you sad? Explain what makes you sad as an adult. Giving them the words to express their feelings and the space to be creative and to be a child. As I shared the experience when I was in Hong Kong with those adults, they did not like me telling them not to do what they weren't comfortable with. Putting yourself in the child's place as well. Sometimes, like, you may be wanting to have, like, I'm doing this Zoom meeting. Some parents do a lot of things electronic now, and they don't want their kids coming and interfering. Give them a routine. I have an hour that I need to myself to do X, Y, and Z. In this hour, provide them with different things that they can do. If there's not another parent, if there's another parent in the home, that's great, so that they can entertain if as needed. But if not, give them open-ended things to explore, whether it's ribbons and or Play-Doh. It could be on the kitchen floor, so it's not a big mess all over the carpet, but something that they can actually manipulate with their hands outside of technology. Technology is good and it has its place, but also, especially in the early years, so within the first 5 years, there should be someone to actually guide the learning that's coming from the technology, so it won't be rote learning. Because a lot of children too, with communication, and I know So communication is a part of the language, but to plan, to understand time comprehension, to be flexible and all those things, it goes with language too. In order for you to share your plan or to share how something is organized. So we need to communicate a lot with them and, be open with the vocabulary and things like that so that they can actually translate what they're trying to say. So what I was saying is with technology, so a lot of kids, and I do see this, they can say a lot of words or mimic a lot of words, but they don't have any comprehension of what they're saying.
What they're saying.
Right.
Okay.
And then a lot of adults will say, well, they know what they're saying because they said it like this. Well, maybe they heard it in that sentence, but they still don't really know what it means, because they didn't have the she to see, hear, and experience what the context of it. They just heard mommy said XYZ. So now I say X, Y, and Z, but I have no understanding. It's just like if you would go to another country and is a language being taught that no one is actually actively showing you what is being said. You might hear a phrase several times and like, I know that phrase, but you have no idea what it means unless someone took time to, or you develop context around it, because children do learn that too. So you can learn context around it if there's a lot of things being shown in the midst of the words. But if it's just being thrown at them, like a lot of things on technology, then they don't really have the true understanding of it. So I think those are like some of the main things that I would share with new parents is, like I said, routine, reading, modeling, problem solving, intentional play, intentional conversations, and dramatic play and having fun, with their kids.
With their kids. I know that you had said earlier about executive functioning skills, that it's from the beginning all the way up until we're elderly. So that's a whole
So
our whole
lifelong.
lifespan is
Yes.
is with executive functioning. Because I know that some people that work with dementia clients are concerned about, or that working memory for that individual has began to decease. It's just it's fading away just little by little. So this is our everyday life with the things that you had said, time management. With I need help with time management, just with organizing and not allowing things to overlap. So I thank you so much for your time, and I learned a lot because I didn't even know about seeing, hearing, and experience.
That's my own thing.
That's your own thing.
Yes,
I'm gonna put your name on the side of it. And
but you're right with that working memory is really the sum total of all the executive function skills. Because if we don't have the working memory, and the working memory, well, not just working memory, our executive function skills come from the frontal lobe of the brain, and that actually develops into the mid-20s. So it's not too late, to show a skill of the brain early in the early years or anything like that. But it's better because your brain it's like a sponge, more so within the first 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it does continue to develop. Well, I know a lot of people think maybe it stops maybe as around early teenage years or something like that, but the brain continues to develop that, especially that frontal lobe, until around mid-20s. That's what research shows. Okay. So as an elderly patient or an elderly person that's experiencing loss in these things, some of these same things that I'm sharing would help those as well. So puzzles, I know a lot of dementia and Alzheimer's people, they work with puzzles, but labeling, we do that in the classroom settings of young children to put things back to help be organized. Mm-hmm. I recommend that also for elderly patients. And I know some get when they don't realize it, they don't want to accept that their mind is going a little bit. But
Mhm.
if you put it into their mind of planning, oh, this helps you keep organized, by like opening their cabinet and put what's in there for them. So it still gives them that sense of ownership, because when executive function is low, then you have low self-esteem and you're tired out and, feel discouraged. Relationships are damaged as well. Think about that person that's always late to everything. For some person, that could be a real concern where they are not wanting to be around them anymore because they have a high expectation more so. So executive function is just help. I mean, it's a part of life. It's part of whole life, as you were saying. But I just wanted to share that, like in the elderly years, it could go back to some of the same things that I talked about, being intentional with the elderly so that they know what's expected of them, what's next, and how to make a plan, how to survive, like the little brain loss, so the working memory loss. And with that is just setting things up in the environment for them to see, because maybe they don't have the history of, I put something there yesterday, but if it's a label there, they can see it right then and now and say, hey, it's there.
It's there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Miss Dr. Evans. I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate your time. And is there anything else that you wanted to leave us with that that
No,
sticks out in your mind?
no. But if anybody would like a basic presentation of what I shared, you can email me at drtnikia@playcoach.com. That's dr.t.nikia@playcoach.com.
Okay. All
Email.
right. And thank you again, and you have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
You was